Welcome back to our next lesson in our remote learning series. Today we're going to start learning about nuclear chemistry. Now, nuclear in the title implies we're going to be dealing with changes to the nucleus of atoms. Remember that the nucleus of the atom contains protons and neutrons. Now, protons have a positive charge, and positive charges repel one another. Neutrons don't have any charge, and so they don't take any part in the electrostatic charge. And so the problem we're going to run into is that the nuclei of atoms have some sort of built-in stability issues. Protons are going to tend to push one another away. Now, protons and neutrons do exert another force on one another that we haven't really talked about. It only works at very small distances, and it's strong enough to hold the nucleus together if the nucleus is small and if there is a proper balance between protons and neutrons. So we need to understand a little bit more then about the stability of nuclei. Nuclei are stable if there's a proper balance between protons and neutrons. Now, what that balance is exactly is not something that we're going to worry about here. It's something you may talk about a little bit more in physics, and it's something you would learn about more in a college level chemistry or physics class. You should recognize that no nuclei with over 83 protons is stable. So anything that's too large, there's simply no way that we can get enough neutrons into that nucleus, at least not that we've discovered, that will hold it together. There are nuclei smaller than 83 protons that are also unstable, simply because the balance between protons and neutrons is not right to keep things properly balanced. Any isotope of an atom that or of an element that is unstable is called a radioisotope. They are unstable and they release radiation. That's where the radio in radioisotopes comes from. When they decay, and they will decay or break apart on their own spontaneously because they are unstable. And we'll look at more details of different radioisotopes as we go on. So we do need to understand a little bit about different forms of radiation, and scientists have given names to these. They're largely going to be named with Greek letters. So our first one, alpha particles. Alpha particles, that's use this little symbol alpha here, that squiggle there that looks sort of like a little fish is the Greek lowercase letter alpha. Alpha particles, an alpha particle is a helium nucleus. That means it has 2 protons and 2 neutrons. It has an atomic number of 2 and a mass number of 4. We'll see that more in a minute. Alpha particles, you may remember, are what Rutherford used in his gold foil experiment. Beta particles, and they use the Greek letter beta with a minus sign, more on that in a minute. Beta particles are electrons, right? That's all there is to them. These have also been called cathode rays. This is what Thomson used in his cathode ray experiment when he was studying atomic structure. Gamma particles or gamma rays. Gamma rays are simply high frequency electromagnetic rays. There are no particles that we have to worry about with these here, nothing with atomic number or mass or anything like that. Many nuclear reactions simply emit gamma rays to get rid of extra energy. Right? Positrons. Positrons use the same beta symbol that beta particles or electrons use, but they have a positive sign. And positrons are simply electrons with a positive charge. They are a form of antimatter. They are identical to electrons in all ways, except they have a positive charge. And we'll see how those work out in a bit. The symbols for these are shown on table O of your chemistry reference tables, and we'll take a look at that right now. So here is table O, and we'll see alpha particles, beta particles, gamma radiation. Neutrons and protons do come into play here as well, but they don't give them any sort of special names, and there are symbols here that we'll use as well. You'll see that the alpha particles will actually use the symbol alpha with an atomic number and mass number, or we'll use the symbol for the element helium with the atomic number and mass number, because alpha particles are simply helium nuclei, and their symbol alpha particles. Beta particles, we can use the beta symbol or E for electron. They have an atomic number of -1, and that atomic number of -1 we'll see works out when we balance nuclear equations later. They have the same charge but opposite to protons, and they have 0 mass. Gamma radiation, you can use the gamma symbol, no mass, and there's no charge to them either, so they just use zeros for atomic and mass numbers. Neutrons, obviously, we know before. Protons, we could use the hydrogen symbol as well, because the hydrogen nucleus is simply a proton. Or at least for hydrogen 1. Right? And then positrons. Positrons, we're going to use a symbol for an electron or a beta particle, but we're going to use 1 for the atomic number instead of -1. Sometimes we'll put a plus in there so that we remember that it's not negative like we'd expect for an electron. Right? All right, so let's take a look at some of the different ways that we can use these symbols. We're going to use these symbols in nuclear equations. Nuclear equations are pretty straightforward. They're only going to involve the nuclei of atoms. And there are a couple of things to keep in mind. The sum of the atomic numbers is conserved. That means that the total sum of the atomic numbers in the reactants is equal to the total sum of the atomic numbers in the products. The same is also going to be true for the mass numbers. So what we're going to do when we're missing something in a nuclear equation is we're simply going to find the sum of atomic numbers and the sum of mass numbers in both the reactants and products. We can look for things that are missing and we can work those out. One of the things you may need for radioisotopes is to know what the decay mode is, which kind of particle they're going to emit when they decay. That information is shown on table N. I'm not going to show it to you today. I'm simply going to refer to it back and forth. You can look it up yourself. It's pretty straightforward. All right. So the first kind of decay we're going to look at is called alpha decay. Alpha decay should come as no surprise. An alpha particle gets emitted. That means it's going to show up in the products. Because of this, that means that the number of protons is going to decrease by 2 and the number of neutrons is going to decrease by 2, right? Because the nucleus is going to lose 2 protons and lose 2 neutrons. This means that the atomic number decreases by 2, and that makes our nucleus the nucleus of a different element. It changes what element we're dealing with. Our mass number is going to decrease by 4. Let's show you an example of how this is going to work. So if we look up uranium-235 on table N, we'll see that it undergoes alpha decay. So we're going to take our nucleus of uranium, 92 for its atomic number, 235 for its mass number, and we're going to put that in the reactants. We're going to put an alpha particle in the products. And then the other product is going to be a nucleus such that all of the atomic numbers in the products add up to 92, and such that all the mass numbers in the products add up to 235. So if we're dealing with an atomic number 2 and a mass number 4, that means we need to have 90 for our atomic number. That's going to be an atom of thorium, and 231 for our mass number. So the 231 plus 4 adds up to 235. And that's really all there is to it. We have to remember to put the particle that's named on table N in the products, and then make sure that all of the atomic numbers add up. Make sure that all the mass numbers add up properly in both the reactants and in the products. That's all there is to it. All right, let's take a look at beta decay. It's going to work on the same basic idea, but there's some weird stuff going on that I'll explain. A beta particle is emitted. That means that the number of protons increases by 1. This sounds weird because there's no protons getting emitted. I'll explain that in a second. The number of neutrons decreases by 1. And this is because a neutron changes to a proton. It turns out that if you take a neutron and an electron and you combine them together, you're going to get a particle that has you're going to wind up with a particle. No, sorry. As we emit it, you can turn a neutron into a proton by splitting it apart. A proton and an electron together are going to add up to form a neutron with no change in mass and with a neutral charge overall, but you can split apart the neutron to turn into a proton and an electron. So that if you split apart a neutral particle, we're going to wind up with a particle with a positive charge and a particle with a negative charge. So our neutron changes into a proton, the mass stays the same, but the number of protons goes up. This is a little bit weird, right? Which is why I stumbled over it when I was trying to explain it to you. Right, so our atomic number increases by 1 and our mass number is unchanged. This is a lot easier to explain if I show you an example. There we go. So carbon-14. Carbon-14, if you look at it on table N, undergoes beta decay. And what that means is we'll start off with our atom of carbon-14 in the reactants. Our beta particle in the products, that's an electron with a -1 atomic number and 0 for its mass number. So we need to have an atomic number in the nucleus that's formed so that when we add it to -1, we get 6. Right? And 7 plus -1 gives us 6. Right? And then we need to use the same mass number that we had before. What's actually happened is we've had 14 particles in the nucleus of the carbon atom, 6 protons and 6 neutrons. And when one of those neutrons gets rid of an electron, it turns into a proton. So we add a proton, right? And then we're going to wind up with the same mass overall. It's very weird. It's the way these things work. The numbers work out really well. If you write out the equation like this, it's very straightforward. It's sort of just that the implications of what's happening in the nucleus get a little bit weird. All right, so let's take a look then. Positron emission. Positron emission works very much like beta decay, right? A positron gets emitted, right? And so it's going to show up in the products. That means that the number of protons has to decrease by 1 because we're losing the positive charge of the positron. The number of neutrons increases by 1, and this is because a proton winds up changing into a neutron. When the proton emits a positron, its mass is unchanged, but it loses its positive charge, turns into a neutron. So its atomic number decreases by 1, and its mass number is unchanged. So let's show you an example of this. Oxygen 15 undergoes positron emission. Now, oxygen 15 is not shown on table N, but I had the equation put out for us pretty easily, and the numbers are nice and easy to use, so I use this one instead of one of the ones that's on your table. There's only 3 or 4 on table N that actually have positron emission. So we start with our oxygen 15, and then we have our positron. Our positron is like an electron, but with a positive charge, so it's got a +1 atomic number. And so we need to have form nitrogen 15. That way our 7 protons plus our 1 atomic number for our positron add up to 8, and our 15 total mass plus 0 for the positron adds up to 15. Right? So balancing this works out like balancing any of the other equations that we've taken a look at so far. All right? All right. So the last thing that we need to take a look at then is this idea of transmutation. Transmutation means that we change or transmute from one element to another. It only happens by making changes in the nucleus. What we've taken a look at today is natural transmutation, where we're dealing with alpha, beta, or positron decay. This happens with unstable nuclei that do not have the proper balance between protons and neutrons, and will simply happen spontaneously by emitting or giving off an alpha, beta particle or a positron. We can also get transmutation through artificial transmutation. We can bombard the nucleus with other kinds of particles, and when we do that, we'll see that we can either glom some of them together into something bigger, or more commonly, they will split themselves apart into smaller nuclei, but that's something for us to take a look at in another lesson. I hope that this has been helpful to you in understanding a bit about nuclear equations, or introduction to nuclear chemistry, and as always, you'll have the opportunity to ask me any questions about this if there's anything here that you don't understand. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.